Welcome back to Morning Cup. I am so honored today because I have Luke Harlan with me. Luke is a well sought after transformational mindset coach and speaker, freeing people from the common myths, misconceptions, and limiting beliefs, holding them back from creating the life of their dreams with absolute clarity, confidence, and direction. Thank you so much for being here today, Luke.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Doctor.
Well, thank you so much for just coming on. And I'm so excited to dive into your journey of entrepreneurship. So if you could, in a nutshell, just give us a little rundown of how you got here today, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper.
Oh, geez, that's how well I was born. Yeah, no, it's I don't want to too far back, but I got here today. I've always had an urge to do things on my own. I love to work, and I never liked the conventional school type, atmosphere. Just felt limiting and restricting. And I had some turn of misfortune. I was in college, and unfortunately, had to leave some financial struggles that my parents went through, and it just catapulted me into the workforce. Instantaneously, here I was, kind of enjoying the luxury of up to my own devices in school, occasionally going to class and enjoying life, to having to take full responsibility for everything about my life financially. And in an instant, I had to grow up, and I got a job, and I worked within a company, and I got to do everything within that company. And I matured from literally like the part-time mailroom type, boy, to actually being operations officer in about 3 years, and then running and developing new branches of that company. And that really gave me a taste for the inner workings of entrepreneurship and business within a confined structure, so I could learn from other people, learn from my mistakes. But that gave me the taste. So after that, I was tapped by a VC firm and went out and did some other great things in other companies. Got hit with the reality of some recessions, some issues in the economy. Well, unfortunately, we had 9/11 happen. So that really, there's so many different things kind of pivoted me across different platforms. But I knew that I was becoming so unemployable in my mind. Where that the idea of being in a structured environment where I had to show up and answer to other people, when that just wasn't how I was wired. Not that I'm not a team player and can work within an organization, but just I wanted something of my own. I always felt that I could create something and impact lives sort of on my own terms. And I gravitated towards the allure of, the financial freedom, the risk reward, the time freedom, this autonomy, those sort of things. Some of it was born out of ego. Some of it was born out of just seeing other people, do those things. It sounded really awesome to be an entrepreneur. Of course, it took me 10 years before I could actually spell it correctly, but it just sounded really cool. It's like water cooler talk. But that just catapulted me through the ability to learn so many different disciplines and so many different skill sets, how to relate to people, how to manage businesses, how to manage my own time, where I just got into a position where I am now into transformational mindset coaching, where I've gravitated away from helping businesses achieve their objectives and top line revenues, or things that I was brought into in various positions, from a digital marketing strategist now into a bunch of other areas. But now I get to affect people. So I get to help create their best lives, and really go from that consultant role of telling them how to fish, or giving them a fish, to now being the coaching role of teaching them how to fish. And that has really helped me bridge my gap in my entrepreneurship journey, from the success that we're looking for to more of fulfillment, that joy, passion, and purpose, as I, matriculate through, of helping people create best lives, and my own along in that journey from my own learning curve. So that kind of catches up to speed a little bit, I hope.
Yes.
I didn't want to take too much time.
No, it's perfect. And, it's just so interesting how a lot of times I'll hear this from entrepreneurs, where you're a team player, but you just you want your own thing. You want to be able to have that time freedom, but also the freedom to make those decisions and have your own thing, your own entity. But I love that you had all those experiences that led you to here today. But, sometimes we're put in a situation where everything changes. So for college, being able to you had to go into the workforce immediately based off of circumstances, but it was almost like that path was leading you to this path on entrepreneurship. And I love that. And I think sometimes we don't really see it in that moment, but once we take a step back, it's a little clearer.
Well, it's kind of like, what's the expression? What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah.
but yeah, there's so many times, so many things happened, to knock you down, but it's just a task to get back up. And, that's the differentiator. Do you let it, how do you react emotionally to it and you become a victim of the circumstances? Or do you take intentional action and you allow it to kind of pause and have that reflective decision-making time to view it as, hey, here's an opportunity to grow through what I go through and to develop those skills and resilience and resolve and grit and tenacity that are going to make me, forge ahead and become better so I can help and impact other lives. And that's really the difference between, kind of reacting and then intelligently responding. And that's a growth into itself. And it's one of the things I help my clients separate and differentiate, because it's the onus or the impetus for them making decisions that are actually going to serve their goals, as opposed to create, subconscious obstacles and blocks in their life.
Absolutely. And it goes back to making it an opportunity when we think it's a roadblock or a struggle.
Sure.
So I'm curious, with anything that you've gone through, like through the years, have you had any roadblocks that have really made you pivot and shift what you were doing?
Well, that mirror, that darn mirror has been my greatest impediment and roadblock. And it wasn't until like I took ownership and accountability for my life, because there's so many things that happened. I mean, went through 9/11, and that killed a VC dream. We were all going to be millionaires in golden parachutes, and it killed the reinsurance market where I was in the space where you're in. So it was that victim mentality. Oh, the economy, or this thing's happened. I got a divorce. I was in the mortgage business, had a mortgage company, and then that just got handed to us in 08, where, the entire catastrophic collapse of just misdoings and misdealings in the financial markets. Just, here I was with 2 little kids and a house and living the life, and all of a sudden it's going to evaporate. And, there are those times where you're like, why me? Poor me. And then there was the greatest transformation within that was I started to realize and recognize, unfortunately, very kind of in the face, that my life was a responsibility of all my decisions. And it wasn't until I read something by a guy named Jim Detmer called The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, where he talks about, in the beginning of the book, a principle I think Eckhart Tolle went into talking about, which is the paradigm shift of life happening for us and life happening to us. And there was so much in my life when I look back, and I get a little emotional about it, because I realized there was so much lost opportunity, because I treated everything from that victim mindset that, hey, I was better than this. Good things should happen to me because, I'm alive. This sort of entitlement type features. And, I'm going to blame it on the world why I'm not progressing or why things happen. And once I took ownership of the thoughts in my head and realized that, wait a minute, I control those thoughts and those feelings, and then subsequently those decisions and actions that I take, that I'm actually in control. I can't control the outside environment, but I can control my internal environment, and that's my actions I take. So I think the biggest defining moment was embracing that paradigm shift. And it didn't happen overnight. It was a concept that I was aware of, but I wasn't ready to enact. I wasn't ready to accept that accountability and responsibility, because it's hard. You got to look at your wounds. You got to look at regrets and past decisions, and you got to kind of be vulnerable to yourself and unpack that. But in unpacking that, as you know, as a therapist and doctor and all those fun things, that's when we get our sense of control, power, and freedom back, because we realize we can make adjustments. We can choose to do things differently and exercise our free will. So it's in all of those things where I got slapped down by the universe because I wasn't learning the lesson. That's the way I look at it now. Like those things that repeat itself, it's because you didn't learn the lesson. And then finally, when I embraced it, when those things happened, I didn't look at it as the roadblock or the obstacle. I removed myself as the roadblock and the obstacle. Not that I don't do dumb things, not that I don't make some
We're human
decisions. We're human, but at least I recognize the results of which, where they're coming from, and I can look at it more pragmatically and less emotionally, and then make decisions based on bigger North Star goals and like future identities and visions that I have, and then accept the responsibility that might not go to plan. But that's part of the grand design, is that I'm there to pivot and learn from each experience.
Ooh, that was powerful. It really goes back to like with the mirror aspect and understanding that we learn lessons over and over, or put with lessons that we might not take into account until it's like keeps happening in that pattern and the cycle. And you're like, something needs to change. But I love that you really took yourself out of it and you looked at it as, okay, this is an opportunity versus an obstacle, and being able to move through that. So it didn't repeat itself again and again, but being able to look at it differently and not be stuck in that, because I think that's so pivotal, especially transformational coaching as well, but being able to transform yourself first and helping others do the same as well, I think is so important. And I'm curious, because you've had so much success for yourself, what about your clients? Do you have a one or two success stories you can share with us today?
Sure. I mean, it really boils down to giving people permission to think differently, an opportunity to kind of live that gut feeling that they're meant for more, to do more, to be more, to affect more. And one of my great clients, Dale, came to me from the marketing side. He was like, I'm thinking about like merchandising, kind of this idea around courage and leadership. He was a great leader, military personnel, very successful in business. He sold his business. He's into real estate. Here's a guy who's just like textbook, gets it done, it doesn't stop. Nothing's going to stop him. But his vision was small because he didn't give permission to think bigger, or he just didn't have the awareness because of the clarity, insight, and perspective you can't give yourself. Right. And so he comes to me saying, I want to put my logo on a coffee mug. And I look at him and I said, with everything you have, you should be leading a community to help business leaders grow and have courage and be fearless and embrace everything that you've learned over 25 years in military leader, as a business leader, and everything. What you have to say will resonate with so many people who are struggling with confidence, struggling with taking action, struggling that they're not alone in this world of trying to be the man when they have all the same feelings that are knocking us down like everyone else. So he took that to heart, and within a year, he has a thriving community called Lions Guide. He's a leader, he did all these things, and I can't take credit. All I did was plant the seed of opportunity and perspective by saying, you are so much more than the confines of what's already out there. You got to give your permission. And a lot of times it's knowledge, it's information, because I tell my clients, like, if you had 10 Legos, how many things can you build? Well, not many. The problem is that you have this drive to create these masterpieces, these tall, earth-shattering, ceiling-shattering, buildings and concepts, but you only have 10 Legos. So the drive is there, that's all inside, and it's bubbling and boiling to come out, but you only got the 10 Legos, so you don't think you can. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I know how. And you keep coming up with the same conclusions, and you keep doing the same things. So I said, open your mind up. Once you're curious and open and adaptable like we were kids, then you can learn more, talk to more people, podcasts, this show, everything. And then suddenly you have 100 Legos, and then your opportunities exponentially expand. And now you have more pieces to put together. And then you're inviting other people to help you assemble the Legos, and you build community and teams. And it's just a fascinating thing that it all starts with being open and ready to adapt and adopt and being curious to new information instead of holding your ground and defending what you know, and just entering that state which we go from the, unconscious and competent to the conscious and competent. And we raise our hands, and that's basically saying, hey, I don't know what I don't know. Can somebody help me? And there's so many people out there who are willing and ready to help you. And you don't have to be the first person through the minefield. No matter what you want to do in life, someone else has already navigated the successful path. That's why there are coaches and therapists and mentors and courses and programs and instruction out there, because we can take that knowledge, but we really need instruction. But first, we need permission to think we can. And that's where I start out in the fundamentals with my clients, is giving them that permission. So Dale is just a success story of me cracking the door and giving him the opportunity to see that he was, to reflect and put a mirror in front of him to see he was so much more than what he was confining, what I like to say, the self-built mind prison. You've created these walls, these barriers that really only exist in your head. And this is why we can't take compliments. It's because everyone else can see the greatness or our potential, and we can never appreciate that because we're limited in how we look at ourselves. So that's it. So that Dale is probably one of the best stories, because he had all the ingredients and the puzzle pieces. He just didn't know how to create a new picture.
Oh, yes, no, you're absolutely right. When you look at it too, a lot of times we don't see our own potential. And that's the beautiful thing of coaches, mentors, and being able to really hold the mirror up and say, look at what you can accomplish. And I love the example of the Legos too, because I think a lot of times we get so tunnel vision or narrow thinking, versus like looking outside the box of what's
Sure.
possible. And that's like, I love that that's what you've helped Dale with, and being able to understand his true potential. I mean, that's just one example of many, I'm sure, but being able to really recognize that people can take the opportunity instead of looking at it as, okay, well, this is all I can do, I'm limited, or the victim mentality or anything like that. Not to say he had that, but really being able to look at it of like, well, how can we maximize this? How can we help more people and impact more people? And that's exactly what it sounds like you were really helping Dale with, and all your clients really see that true potential so they can make that transformation internally to externally as well.
No, it's amazing. And that gives me my transition from the success markers, or what we believe to be successful. Everyone has their different the tick boxes in life.
Right.
But we come to this point in life where we want we want more, and be more and do more. And that actually comes from fulfillment. It's that passion, purpose. It doesn't have to be tied to your vocation, but how do you wake up in the morning and just like, I want to attack life and like feel about it, and the emotional connection, and to reward yourself, because we're so wired to give to others. And a lot of times we're trying to pour from an empty cup and there's nothing left for us. And we're taught that sometimes that's selfish, but I always know you have to be a little bit selfish to be selfless. I can't love someone if I don't love myself. I can't help others. Like the notion of like, there's nobility in being poor. I can't help the poor if I'm poor. So, the abundance mentality, the more I have, the more I can give, the more I can pay it forward. And that's inevitably, this is one of my favorite quotes, was from Zig Ziglar, an old time, sales trainer, is that I believe his quote was something along the lines, the more people I help get what they want, you'll always get what you want, like to achieve their success. And that's the pay it forward model. And if you do that without quid pro quo, without expecting a return, that's how you put it out in the universe. And then you just seem to get rewarded. And that's just kind of the law of reciprocity. And it also allows you to be authentic and genuine, and not always be thinking transactional, but transformational and relational.
Ooh, yes. And, you said something really important about success, because you're right. Everyone has a different definition of success, but it's showing up and like feeling fulfilled to like the purpose, the clarity, the confidence in yourself.
Sure.
And it doesn't have to be just work. It's how you live your life every day, because you could have everything, all the money in the world, but if you don't feel fulfilled internally, that is going to show up every day.
Well, we link our identities to the superficial all the time. It's like somebody says like, they're that person because they're overweight or they're fat. Does that mean they're a bad person? Does that mean no, it doesn't change their identity. It's just, it's a physical feature, and they can change that. Same thing, there's so many different areas of, you can apply that to. It's, you're not your job. If you're especially an entrepreneur, and this is really critical for entrepreneurs to understand this, our barometer of our self-value is directly tied to our work. If we're failing at work, we consider ourselves a failure. If we're succeeding at work, we consider ourselves success. And that is just a very dangerous game to play. You're on a learning curve. You're on a journey. Life's going to knock you down. Your only failure is not learning the lesson. There's no failure. It's just an opportunity to grow, and, treat those obstacles as opportunities to, grow through what you go through. And I know it. I catch myself allowing my emotional connection, not to be happy to have successes in business, but to not let my identity be determined by that success, that I'm good enough or not good enough. And it's a dangerous game, because an entrepreneur, it is 100% personal. Everything you do has your blood, sweat, and tears into it. You can't blame anyone else. And if you do, you're not going to be an entrepreneur for very long. And so you got to take responsibility, but you also got to give yourself grace and space to acknowledge that you're on a learning curve, that sometimes things won't go well and you're going to learn from it. And that the successes you have are usually born on the kind of the shoulders of other people that have helped carry you to where you're going. Because even though we do it alone, we don't do it alone. If that makes sense. It's complicated, and that's the entrepreneurship journey is a hard one. And that's why it's all glamour until you actually start doing it.
I believe that. And, I love that you brought up failure, because, as an entrepreneur, there's so much failure, but it's reframing that too, because it's the lessons learned. Exactly what you said. It's really about knowing, okay, well, this didn't work, but maybe tweaking something and that's going to change it, but not tying your identity to one thing, because when one thing doesn't work out, it's going to ripple effect and impact everything and crumble. But really being able to define your life on multiple platforms, whether it's family, life, your health, your business, everything, because again, success means different things to different people, but realizing too, as an entrepreneur, there's more times you're going to fail than not fail. At least in my experience. I don't know if anyone can relate.
Well, the other thing is a lot of times it comes down to ego too, and the chip on your shoulder, because you're trying to prove to everyone else who said you can't do it, that's not safe. What are you going to do? Small businesses collapse. You should get a real job. You know, you get, and those are, those just mom and dad and your spouse, like those are your closest people who are, just out of their fear for your safety are projecting their limitations upon you. And we understand how projection works. But at the end of the day, we're fighting this battle of ego a lot of times to be successful and prove everyone right, prove everyone wrong while we're trying to prove our methodologies right. But a lot of times we get so interconnected to the method in which we're trying to achieve our outcome that we lose focus that the results and the outcome is actually what we need to be focused on versus how we get there. And sometimes we need to abandon or pivot or switch how we're getting there that's not working, because we don't need to die on that hill, die on that product or that service. A lot of time the marketplace comes back and says, no, we don't want that, or we don't want that in that form or fashion, or we don't want to hear it from you. And that's a harsh reality, but that is being perceptive to what the market wants and giving them, and then being able to drop the ego and say, how can I reconstruct this in the way that they want it, and then deliver it to achieve. These are just leverage points. Your sales, your services, your consulting, your coaching are just you're just leveraging value to achieve what you really want to achieve, that peace of mind, that time freedom, that financial freedom, the ability to give, to do, and to live the life on your terms. It's having free will and choice. So you got to eat the sandwich. You got to eat I won't say what kind of sandwich. You got to eat, the stuff in the middle that's work, that is going to not taste so good. And you got to swallow that humble pie to get where you want to go and figure out what's the best way to get there, and not tie your identity, your emotions to those leverage points, but just refine them until they start working to deliver the results that you're keeping focused on. That's where your North Star should be. That's where your head should be. That's where the positivity should be. It's going to take work. And unfortunately, that's not the dream that's sold. It's all Instagram, instant millionaires, get on TikTok, do this, anyone can start a business. That is not true. That is absolutely not true. And we've learned some harsh lessons. Not everyone is wired to be an entrepreneur. And that is 100,000% okay, because you can be an entrepreneur. You can be within a company and still have that self-improvement, that personal development, upping your value. I mean, Zig Ziglar also said, there's a great quote from, it's like, you may not sign the check, but you're putting in the value. You're putting in the amount on that line. So you can always be the CEO of You Incorporated, and you get to choose every morning when you wake up how you're going to run the business inside your head within the business of an organization, and then still have those goals and strategies. So anyway, that's just, those are the fights that we have as an entrepreneur, because we've all had those days where, damn it, punching a clock from 9 to 5 sure sounds good. Having weekends off, but that's the dilemma. It's the entrepreneurs and the innovators dilemma.
Yeah, no, it's the quote that's like, well, you can work 40 hours for someone else or 80 for yourself. And that's the reality. It's not like the pretty pictures on like social media. It's really all the stuff that happens behind the scenes that not everyone is seeing, that they think, oh, wow, they're instant overnight success, or they blew up virally on like TikTok or anything. But really understanding too, that it's the work that you put in day in, day out that people aren't seeing. Some people put the behind the scenes, but majority of the time you're seeing the highlight reels of somebody's life as well. Because a lot of people don't want to post all the terrible things that might be happening that day, but then they're able to flip it and see that, okay, well, they weren't terrible. It was just, I was dealing with something. It was frustrating, didn't work, but I was able to overcome it.
Yeah, it's consistency over time. That's all it is. That's, that's the formula. There's no overnight success. They're the outliers. They're the complete outliers. Yeah. And but you're sold on this. You're sold on, the original Tim Ferriss, the 4-hour work week. No one starts out with a 4-hour work week. They start out with the 80-hour work week, and they learn systems, and they learn what they really want. They learn what they want to do, what they want to outsource. They get the economics so they can go from having, resourcefulness to resources, and they can level up and they can scale, and then they can, define their time and minimize it. But it doesn't start out of the gate that way. And that's what's being sold, which is really unfair to the person who has that, who's eager and wants to be independent and wants that autonomy. But it's like I've seen before, it's like, what are you willing to trade for the next year or two? What are you willing to give up? What are you willing to put aside to live the rest of your life the way you want it to live? Mm-hmm. And that comes to, that's delayed gratification, and having the discipline to have delayed gratification is a skill, and it takes a tremendous amount of work, because we're used to, we're biologically wired to, seek pleasure and avoid pain. Mm-hmm. And so when we see any opportunity to give ourselves pleasure immediately, that's hardwired into us. So to hold off on that for a bigger goal takes discipline, it takes work, it takes, guidance. And that's something that many of us don't have the ability to do unless our why is super high, why we want to do it. And we got to define those.
And yes, you're right. It's about the why. And I'm curious too, because living life on your terms, how are you able to integrate work, life, family, everything that's going on in your world on a day-to-day basis?
Planning, time blocking, a lot of techniques that I wasn't very good at first. Was really prioritizing, but foundationally I had to prioritize. What do I want? Why do I want it? And how's it going to make me feel to achieve it before creating the plan for it? So, and I could take that in any facet of life. What do I want with my, my relationship with my sons? What do I want out of that? Why do I want that? And how's it going to feel when I achieve that? And I can do those three questions. Those are the three questions I ask my clients. And we have to go from the 30,000 foot to the deep meaning, and there's exercises we really take them through. In fact, everyone could there's a great exercise online called 7 Levels Deep. That you can just say, what is the premise? Is it business? Is it family? Is it recreation? Is it community? Is it my faith? Is it my health? And you can take any one of these facets of your life and ask these questions to really drill down to what's that really core thing that you want. And once you've isolated that, then you can create a plan for it. And that's what I did, is I said, what are my priorities right now? And you only can have 2 or 3 at the most. In life, you just can't have any more. You don't have the time, the energy, you can do 5 things okay. You can do 2 to 3 things really, really well. So how have I balanced it? Is that I don't segment it in my head. It's all part of the grand picture of living my best life. So if I'm called away for work versus family versus this, I know it's all for the good of the purpose. And so but I definitely carve out times and do deep work. I work on myself, my health. I work on my client work and building new things. And then I carve out time for family and social, to have that human interaction connection. If you don't have that, what the hell is all this for? I mean, driving, taking a vacation by yourself is not really the thing that I'm looking to do. So anyway, it's really prioritizing. Once you prioritize and then you let go of the superficial trappings of what others are doing, because remember, you're not like others, you are. And this is why gravitating to entrepreneurial groups and owner operators and listening to great podcasts and shows like this one, when you're surrounded by a community of like-minded people who get it, that you are alone. You're on an island, usually within your sphere of influence, that you're doing things they aren't doing. You're willing to not binge 2 hours of Netflix because you're creating that blog post, or you're trying to figure out how to create customer value, or you're doing your, shoe leather marketing, or you're building that crib because you just had a baby and no one else is doing it for you. You're doing the things that you have to do to serve your priorities and no one else's. And you should be completely unapologetic of how you go about that, because it's your life. No one else is living it. And we spend too much time worrying about the judgment of what other people think, who have no involvement. They're not paying your bills. They're not creating your friendships. They're not getting you clients. They're not putting food on the table. They're not putting clothes on your back. Yet we give them this power. We give away our power to be subjugated to what other people think, who honestly couldn't care less. So that's a lot of times you just have to forge that new identity. And it's hard to abandon the conventions and the trappings of social interaction, that Friday night is drink night and Mondays suck and Sundays for sitting on your ass. And no, when you want the life you want, they're 24 hours in a day and they're gone every single day. You need to choose your priorities and invest in what you really want. How do you want to live life? And you're going to have an extraordinary life, well past ordinary. And you're not going to give a crap that you didn't watch Game of Thrones.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That is so true. And, I think you just touched on something super important. It's prioritizing. And I always say, like, put yourself at the top of the priority list, but it's focusing on 2 or 3 things. Like in the beginning, I was always focusing on, oh, I'm helping this person and that person versus like helping myself in like growing my businesses. But I think too, it's just so important that you said that. It's, where do your priorities lie? Is it living a life that everybody else is living, or living the life on your terms and what you want, and knowing that it's a path that you're paving? It's not paved for you. You're creating that.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm hearing you're saying too, is really about just being able to go against what the society thinks and everybody else thinks, but what is true in your heart, and following that. And I think you said it so wonderful. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, my pleasure.
And
lessons learned.
Yes, so many, right? We could probably write like volumes of books of the lessons learned. But what are 2 or 3 things that you wish you would have known in the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey that you know now? Speaking of volumes.
Well, I think a lot of it's just maturing, but I would have to say that the first thing would have been is to drop the ego, is to really, is to don't think there's any sort of entitlement because you're an entrepreneur that you're going to have to work twice as hard. Is really being realistic about what you're getting involved in, and not from a standpoint of telling your friends or water cooler talk. But the first thing is getting in your own business is doing the due diligence and talking to other people who've gone through the scrapes, the scrapes and bruises and those sort of things. It's like kids when they see their parents successful and don't realize that when they were little, you're living in a 1-bedroom apartment eating, table scraps while your parents worked their butts off and got degrees and did these things. But you're only remembering the good times 20 years later. And you think that's just how life, you miss the 20 years it took them to get there. And it's the same thing with entrepreneurship. Is you look at the final product of the people that you want to emulate, the people that, hey, I want to be like that person, or I want to practice like that, or I want a business that's doing these things. You don't see, like you said before, they're not showing you the scars and the growing pains. They're not seeing the bad decisions. They're not seeing the failures, the bankruptcies, the partnership breaks, the, time they drop the ball with their biggest clients. You're not seeing the wounds of that growth mechanism of entrepreneurship. So I think is that first one is to do your due diligence, know what you're diving into with sort of as much healthy perspective as you can, and then understand that there's going to be a lot more lean times before the good times. And that's just the growth of anything. And you got to be willing to invest. So that's the one thing if I jumped into it in like the entrepreneur fashion, like you jump off the cliff and then you build the wings, you build the parachute. Sometimes that's not the best way. You should have at least the parachute materials when you jump off the cliff. A little prior planning prevents piss poor performance. And I think I've been guilty of that because you're so gung-ho, you're so excited. I'm going to do this. The second thing I learned, something I mentioned before, is that you can't be in love with your baby. You can't tie your identity to what you think the market will want, what you think everyone needs, because it's you. In the harsh reality, the market determines what it wants. Your mom may think you're special. The marketplace will only think you're special if you're providing value that's going to serve their immediate needs, solve a problem, or create a better situation for themselves. Because everyone is, we all heard that, tuned into WIIFM. What's in it for me? Consumers are looking. All we are as providers are problem solvers. Consumers are looking for someone to solve their problem. It's about their life and making their life better. Who gives it to them and provides it? That's a benefit if you're a good guy or a good woman or something like that. But at the end of the day, they care about their themselves, and that's exactly where they need to be. So that's the first thing, is dropping who you are in the equation and focus on providing value to the marketplace that's not tied to your identity. So you can test in a vacuum, you can test unbiasedly, you can test unattached emotionally to what you're doing to see what works, and then drive what works, and then be the best at it.
I love those. I think those are so important too, like dropping the ego, focusing on what the market wants versus what you think you might want. It's about that, but also just being able to really look around your circle, what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. But those were amazing. So thank you for sharing them.
Sure.
And we are going to jump into the rapid fire questions if you're ready for them.
Uh-oh.
So the first question is, what motivates you to work smarter?
I have 2 mantras on my board every morning. The first one is, how can I improve? And the second one is, who can I serve? So that's what drives my every day. It's if I'm not meeting those two criteria, how do I make myself better, of more value, and how many, who can I serve with those skills? And that just drives it, because it's the bedrock of everything I do, everything I create, everything I market, everything I communicate, every service or value point I deliver, whether it's communicating to my children, my neighbors, my clients. If I'm not getting better, I can't give better. I can't evolve. I can't appreciate. If you're not growing, you're dying in a lot of ways. So if I'm not kind of feeding myself to give to others, then my cup is going to run dry, and I'm not going to be of service to the second part, which is who can I impact and be of value today?
Yes, so spot on. And if you were a superhero, what would be your power or powers?
My 14-year-old brain just went in another direction. But it's, I honestly, it would be the ability to heal. And I say, because whenever I've always had this thing, like if I could heal all past, present wounds and traumas, not to the sense of immortality, but to take pain away. I think that's like a quality of empathy that I approach people with now. I didn't always have it. I was always, more self-focused. But if I can meet people at an empathetic level and understand what they're going through, I can at least articulate and communicate and hopefully better serve them or point them in a direction of people who can. So if I had any superpower, it would probably be that high EQ. But if I had in a fantastical, super unnatural way, if I could just heal them on the spot and just remove that pain, because that pain, whether it's emotional or physical, is blocking them from becoming their best selves, which is kind of a divine gift that they were created to give the world. And whether it's a psychological block or actually physical or sometimes both, that's what I look to, at least in the transformational mindset coaching world, is how can we unclutter and give clarity, purpose, and drive and insight to our clients, that they can see how amazing they are and just have the courage to execute without the barriers once we get them removed.
That's beautiful. That would be a beautiful power to have. And I think it's necessary. So if you were to share a meal with any four individuals, living or dead, who would they be?
Wow. Did I say I wanted this question? Jeez. All right. Oh my gosh. Is there another question? This is a tough one. This is one that any four people, there's so many just amazing, pragmatic people in the world that have given so much. And, you go to, the leaders and all these things in the trenches, comes to mind is, like Gandhi. Here's a person who I didn't start out in life with a lot of patience and had a lot of judgment and a lot of baggage. And here's someone who's just practiced, the ability just of peace. Not that I don't believe there's times for the opposite to achieve certain goals, but just from a mindset perspective of just having that tranquility and really understanding our place in being in life. I think he would be a person that would definitely affect and change me. And that's the criteria for who would I want to sit around, is where can I draw from the well that I've never been exposed to, or from the purest sense of it to give me the enlightenment at that level. Because if I know I change, I can pass it along just like a ripple in a pond. And I'm a small pebble, but if everyone's a small pebble, that ripple is just going to continue. Let me think of one more. I don't want to take too much time for the four people. Honestly, I think Nelson Mandela, because he really touched. I read a large article about mindset, is that he always would say that, he may have been in prison, but he was never imprisoned in his mind. So someone who could actually fortify and create the construct in their mind while they're physically in prison to live a happy, thoughtful life and actually take enjoyment within his head would be fascinating to understand how that works. Because there's so many times that we're just, bombarded by negativity or by the inclination of others' selfishness or, ignorance and around. And we just have to figure out how do we can't remove them from our lives to a certain degree. We can turn off the TV, but we can't really remove ourselves from a lot of people who are close to us who may have different thoughts and beliefs than us. And it just to be able to kind of fortify and create a happy space that's not as penetrable would be just kind of an amazing ability. And I know other people have touched on that, but when I see someone who goes through real world experience, it's better than just a lecturer of repeating information. The people who've gone through it, I just have a certain sort of kinship because I've been through so much and I know it resonates better with my clients and it's more authentic. Not that the knowledge is any different, But I think we gravitate towards those who've had similar experiences, who that we trust to walk us through their journey as we've successfully done ours.
Yeah, no, I think that would be a fascinating table as well. Just even with those two individuals are such powerhouses in their own right, but being able to get that enlightenment and learn from different walks of life, I think that's what it's about.
Yeah, it's all about learning, which is very contrary to how I started matriculating in school. I can tell you that my dad's
change.
my dad, who's no longer with us, is rolling his eyes because it's like couldn't get you to do homework with a gun to your head, son. Now all you do is read books and learn stuff. What the hell? Yeah,
we all have the ability to change, right?
Well, I think that's the life lesson here, is that we were meant to change, and when we hold on to it, that creates a friction. It's like throwing an anchor into the past that drags us into the present and kills our future with anxiety. Our past is full of depression, and our present just get muted. We don't live in a present. We live in two states that aren't real.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's true. So speaking of learning and constantly developing, what is the last book that you've read or listened to?
You know what? I'm going to be so cliche here.
Yeah.
That I literally just went back to one of my favorites, which is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Yeah, I was just reading that.
And I probably reread it, and there's like notes and highlights and all sorts of tabs in this one. I have multiple copies because I tend to lose them around the house. I went back to that because I really needed to center myself as far as, my getting clarity of purpose, and then, some manifestation, just clarity. There's so many things in that instructional methodology within Think and Grow Rich that I needed to go back to the basics. Sometimes, and this is kind of a cautionary tale for entrepreneurship as well, is we gravitate to the really cool stuff. We gravitate to the widgets and the CRMs and the electronics and the massive ability, and we get suckered into the entrepreneur ADD of the next shiny object. And the problem is those are tools. And then there's skills. There's only three things we have in life. It's mindset, skill set, and tool set. And the problem is if our mindset isn't correct, if we don't ground ourselves in fundamental principles of how our mind operates, of what we need to focus on to develop the radar, the intentionality to use our reticulated activating system, that GPS center of the brain that goes after and provides the awareness of opportunity that's already around you, so it's not closed off, so you can be seeking and problem solving 24 hours a day in your subconscious. We're not using these amazing tools based on the fundamentals, many of which are just outlined and detailed and instructional order in this great timeless classic for business people and entrepreneurs, is that we forget to do these things. And it's kind of like Da Vinci not knowing what the primary colors are and then trying to paint the masterpiece, is that we jump ahead of the growth that we need to understand, embrace, practice, and execute, and then redo that until it becomes an ingrained habit and behavior. And that's why I went back to that one, because that's a mindset, that's your education, and that breeds into skill sets, which is just skill set is just the avocation of a learned ability that you can provide. And then there's tool sets, which just leverage that ability for you to be, either do it exponentially or more efficiently or effectively, or to scale to a larger group of people. And the problem is we get so excited about the skill sets and the tool sets. I'm going to learn this and use this massive tool, that we forget the fundamentals of business and the fundamentals of our mindset, which goes back to the three questions. What is it you really, really want in this life? Why do you want it? And how's it going to make you feel? Yes, feel to achieve it. And until you have the bedrock of that foundation, you can't go to the graduate level skills and tools. You can't, because you're going to misappropriate them. You're going to hit singles and doubles. You're not going to hit home runs with it, because you're not going to know fully functionally how to use that and put in alignment for mindset to skill set to tool set to achieve your objectives. So going back to the basics sometimes is exactly what you need. And that's what I needed to do. I absolutely needed to do, because I was having foggy. I wasn't having clarity on some of my next matriculations into the business and how I wanted to serve. And the more foggy it got, I realized that I had to go back to the basics to get that clarity and that insight again. And then have talks, because coaches need coaches. Yeah. You need to talk. You can't do it alone. It's like proofreading a paper, guys. If you proofread a paper, you're going to substitute naturally the missing words and things like that you can't see. You have no perspective on your own work. That's why talking to other people is so critically important, is to get that perspective and to see what you can't see because you're too close to it.
You're absolutely right. And final question, what
Sorry.
is, so if you were to think of an animal and describe yourself as an animal, personality type, style, what animal would you be?
Oh, geez. You know what? I gravitate towards the rhinoceros.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
okay. And my sophomore humor, I used to say it's because I'm 3,000 pounds and horny, but that's the low level side. The high side of it is, I read a book a long time ago, from 1970s, called Rhinoceros Success. And it really talked about the attitude and the self-awareness of the rhinoceros, that it's not the fastest, it's not the prettiest, but it has a drive and a mission. It has a purpose. It's not a cow that sits around waiting and gets slaughtered. It's someone who goes out there and takes care of themselves, takes care of their family. They're very family-oriented creatures. They look tough, but they're just like any other animal. There's like soft on the inside, even though they have that hard exterior. And I just sort of grabbed a lot of those things were like, yes, I've evolved over the years, but when I look at myself as the perception of wanting sort of that thick armor as an entrepreneur, is that you have to develop thicker and thicker skin, because the more you say in the world, especially with social media, the more you get out there and kind of proclaim your value. And I know you're unsure of what you're saying. And a lot of times you have that imposter syndrome. Like, who am I to say these things? Because you don't feel like you're always trying to gravitate to some level of some perceived expert or guru. But you're going to take heat for it, because when you say something worthwhile, you're going to get the feedback, the criticism, the haters out there who are projecting sometimes their own insecurities, or you have the real critique and feedback, which you should learn from and listen to. But you got to develop that thick skin if you're going to be an entrepreneur. So the rhinoceros, it's just this big, tough animal, not the prettiest, but it's going to get its stuff done, and it's definitely higher on the food chain. So I don't know.
That's for sure.
It's
well, good decision. You're right. It's about having thick skin, because you're going to fall down and you have to get back up if you really want this. But Luke, where can people find you, hire you, use your services? We're going to link everything below, but if you could let us know too.
Oh, best place to go is my website, which is lukeharlancoaching.com, LUKEHARLAN coaching.com. There you're going to have so many different resources. There's a free masterclass. There's a mastermind newsletter, Mindset Mastery, that you can learn more about the programs, the courses, the coaching. Everything else is going to be on that site. And you can jump out to social media, etc., if you want to follow me there as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Luke, for coming on today, sharing all your wisdom. You had so many great stories, and just understanding to the depths of being an entrepreneur, the good and the bad and everything in between. But you persevered, and thank you so much again for your time, your energy, and just all your wisdom today.
Oh, it is absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment below. What was the biggest takeaway from Luke today? I'm sure he would love to read your comment, and we'll see you on the next video.